Okay, good evening. Oh gosh, I hate these bright lights. I can never see you guys. Okay, thank you, and Kuyanamik, how we say in Inuktitut, for having me speak here tonight. Thank you for bringing up the lights. I like to be able to see who I'm talking to, right? Like it's more engaging. It really is a pleasure to be here. It's my first time coming to Yellowknife, and to be able to spend yesterday and today speaking with youth in the community and community members, and really learn and listen to people's stories and share has been really, really special. So, as you've heard, my name's Donna Kimmaliardjuk, and I'm a physician, and I'm still technically in training to be a board certified heart surgeon, but that's what I do every day, heart surgery. And I'm Inuk, that's singular for Inuit, for those who don't know, from Ottawa, but as mentioned, I originate from Chesterfield Inlet, Nunavut. Being recognized as the first of this, that, or the other has really come with some amazing platforms like this to be able to share my story and speak with people, and go to Parliament and the Senate and House of Commons and meet really important folks in the country. But I must admit, I do have or suffer from imposter syndrome, that especially at times like this where I feel like, okay, they want me to speak and who wants to listen? Like, what do I have to say? Especially, I'm very early in my career. That's a comment I get from a lot of people. It's like, oh, you look young. It's like, I look younger than I am, and I feel older than I am. But nonetheless, here I am tonight, and here you are. So, when asked to come and speak tonight, I was, looking at previous talks or previous themes, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw the theme for this year's gathering is building on strength, which I love, because that's something that resonates with me on a personal level, as it has been my guiding mentality in my life. And as we look at how Indigenous culture and health intersect, I really do think it is the new mantra of the 21st century. Because if you were to ask the general Canadian population, or maybe even some folks in here, in what ways do Indigenous culture and health intersect? Or ask Canadians to give examples of how they do. I hate to say that I wouldn't be surprised to hear if people would say or give examples of, well, the statistics of, TB rates are 290 times higher in Inuit in Nunavut compared to the rest of the country. Or the suicide rates for Inuit men in Nunavut are 9 times higher than that of the international average. Or you would even get maybe a response from some people that's quite frankly racist, but the drunk native, and you're all drinking and drunks and substance abuse and mental health problems. Or still the number of reservations that have drinking water advisories. There's all these negative connections between Indigenous culture and Indigenous people and health. But I would argue that these same Canadians that probably give these examples, that probably very few of them also realize that these health stats and the current state of our health are a direct result of colonization, of the relocation and placing people into artificial set communities, of residential schools, of intergenerational trauma, of how our ancestors' lives were forcibly changed out of harmony and into disarray. And this is as recent as just one generation ago. I mean, my mother went to residential school, and believe me, I have felt and suffered the consequences of that. And so when I think about our current state of health and where we've come from or what the past has been, I have this one analogy in mind that I've had actually for a few years, and I've never really shared it. And I tried to do a Google search. I don't think anyone's published on this, so I really hope no one else has heard this analogy before. And bear with me, because when I told my partner, who's non-Indigenous, what I was going to be talking about, he goes, oh my God. So you can't talk about that. That's way too radical. Like, oh my God, what if you get quoted saying this? And I was like, I'm fine with that. I think I can explain it out. So bear with me. So it's my analogy of how I think of our current state of health and what's happened. And let's go back to colonization, because that's when things all got changed, right? So when we look at colonization and the Europeans, or specifically the British, let's say, that came over here to Turtle Island, it is analogous to a parasite infecting a host body. As a physician, I think of things very clinically, right? And so once I learned, about parasites and infections in medical school, I was like, oh my God, this is what has happened in our country. I don't know if anyone's heard this, but hopefully it'll make sense. And please, 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 I do not want anyone leaving this talk saying, well, Donna thinks Europeans are parasites. Like, that's not the point, okay? I have nothing against European peoples themselves. I'm talking about the actual migration of people from Europe leaving their host environment, their natural environment, coming to an unknown environment, and taking over. And so they came to a foreign environment, a healthy host. Our communities, our lands were healthy. And like a parasite, they quickly took over and multiplied, infecting the functionality of the healthy host, our communities, quickly using up the host's resources, literally using up our resources, and destroying the normal function of the host, weakening it and taking its nutrients. This is exactly how a parasite works. The host, Indigenous peoples, Indigenous cultures, our communities, have been sick. And it takes time to recover from that. It doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just happen within a generation. But I do think the host is slowly and surely adapting to the parasite and evolving to function with it. And I carefully chose the word adapt here rather than fight because I think fighting it has been futile. And I do think it will continue to be futile. Maybe not in the future. Maybe we'll fight, this parasite, this colonization, totally go back to the way things were 100, 200, 400, 500 years ago. Realistically, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I mean, I love having my smartphone and my car and the modern amenities of today. So we adapt. And so for our communities to become healthy again, we turn to our immune cells. Just like when you're sick with an infection, a virus, a parasite, your immune cells turn on. So what is that? Those are our tools that we have to enable our body, our communities, to be strong and healthy. Using what is ingrained in us, which is our culture, our language, our ceremonies, our families and communities, to give us strength and allow us to cope with this parasite. And then I think of the use of like anti-parasitic agents or something like antibiotics as our allies. These are the non-Indigenous Canadians who get it, who understand reconciliation, who are there to advocate for our rights and fight for our rights, and just have the goal of helping us. So this is how I have seen colonization by the Europeans, by the British in my mind. And I think it sets the mind frame to understand how and why our communities have been suffering, why people are unwell, and why we aren't 100% well yet. And so with this in mind, and thinking about today, I do now see Indigenous culture and health on the mend, on the upswing. It's far from perfect, and there's a long way to go. I mean, this parasite got us so sick, we were in the intensive care unit. We were on the brink of death and have been sick for so long that the recovery is going to be just as long, if not longer. But as we reclaim our cultures, we can shift our energies and our focus from solely on the negatives or solely on just surviving and change it to recovery and regaining our strength and even thriving with rich culture. And so, taking things into a bit of a more positive light perhaps, what we have known as Indigenous cultures, what we've known forever, is that health is about wellness, not illness. In Western medicine, we are so focused on illness and on a diagnosis. I mean, I'm a heart surgeon. I'm focused on the heart. I'm focused on the blockages. I'm focused on the diabetes, the obesity, the kidney problems, the diagnosis. And too often we forget that we aren't just treating a disease or a diagnosis, but we're treating a person. A person which includes not only the physical ailment, but also the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual health. Our elders, our connections to our cultures, to our land, has taught us this. We've known this forever. And I do think Western medicine is finally now catching on to this. I mean, I was taught in medical school just a few years ago that, when you see a patient, you have to see the patient as a person. What a radical thought. You have to see them as a person. And there is this slow shift or even a push in medicine to focus now on wellness, what we call in healthcare primary prevention, which is making sure that a person is well and taking care of themselves so that you prevent getting sick with diabetes or heart disease or stroke or you name it. So we're now trying to ensure that, we're making our patients healthy and well. But we, as Indigenous people, are so fortunate that we come from cultures that are family-oriented and are rooted in community. Because that too greatly has an impact and improves our health and well-being. Again, what we've known for millennia, that we need to take care of our elders and have them involved in community and family, what we've known, Western medicine is only now realizing it and publishing about it. So for example, it's been published a lot that if you look at elderly folks, those that are well connected to their family or to their community and are involved in social activities and get out of their room or get out of their house and see people, they live longer compared to folks who are socially isolated, alone in the nursing home and don't have visits with people. They don't live as long. Or people who are affected by chronic illnesses, so those that are involved in their community and well supported by their family do better than those who don't have that. So Indigenous culture and being connected to it is vital to our well-being and to our health. And so when I was asked to speak tonight and to speak to the ideas about what the transformative effects of strengths-based approaches and understandings of Indigenous health and health research mean, or examples of that, I first thought, okay, what the heck does that even mean? I didn't know, that's such a long sentence. I had to break this down. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God. So I did a Google search. Thank goodness for Google. So, because I was like, what does strengths-based approaches mean? Okay, so I'm gonna share it with you, because I hope I'm not the only one who doesn't know what that means. So Google told me it's a type of positive psychotherapy and counseling that focuses on your internal strengths and resourcefulness, and less so on your weaknesses, failures, and shortcomings. It also sets up a positive mindset that helps you build on your best qualities and improve resilience. And I found that a listed benefit of strengths-based approaches is to look at how systems are set up, especially where power can be out of balance between a system and the people it's supposed to serve. So all in all, it's a healthy coping mechanism if you think about it. And I feel like the wise people that I've met in my life, my parents and grandparents and elders, they've taught me this, to use this mindset when I've been going through something difficult in my own life. And I think that this is something that our communities and cultures are focusing on now too. And this is completely demonstrated by the cultural programming and services initiated by Indigenous communities and being offered to Indigenous communities. The resurgence of practicing our culture, of being connected to our traditions, being connected to our land, are examples of strengths-based approaches to improving our health and well-being. The host, or the Indigenous peoples, Indigenous communities, is using its strong immune cells, our culture, our language, our traditions, ceremonies, focusing on the positive, the strengths, to improve. So on a grander scale, as I kind of think about that question, or thought about it some more, the question also becomes, how do we get others, though, non-Indigenous Canadians, to transform their views, to view us in strengths-based ways? Because we know we have strengths-based going on. And often when they say, oh, truth and reconciliation, I'm like, what do I have to reconcile? I didn't do this. It's the white people that need to reconcile. They need to learn. So how do we change that? How do we get their views to change from viewing us as stereotypes, or from seeing, news stories of Indigenous health, poor Indigenous health outcomes, not as an annoying news story, but as something that's relevant and important to them? How do we get them to have buy-in and see that the current system set up, i.e. the government, healthcare, provincial and federal government, FNHIB, that they're not adequately helping the people that they're meant to serve, which is us. How do we get folks to feel engaged and encouraged by the strengths and resiliency of Indigenous Canadians, to focus on creating positive outcomes, to be our anti-parasitic agents? I mean, that's a big, big question, and I think it's kind of where we are now, and I definitely do not have all the answers. But I do think the first step is knowledge. Knowledge is power. As cliche as that sounds, it's cliche for a reason because it's true. So by continuing to do Indigenous health research, to increase the number of our Indigenous scientists, social scientists, researchers, doctors, to increase the amount of quality research done by Indigenous Canadians about Indigenous Canadians is the first step. Or if it's research that's not being done by Indigenous Canadians, have us involved in the ethics review and in the protocol and in the dissemination and writing of the papers. Have the research done in a way that reflects the values and the needs of the people that are being researched. And so having the research out there, you know, asking these questions of, well, what are their needs, or what are the top 3 priorities for this community to be healthy, or what are they struggling with, or what do they need more of? Asking those questions and doing the research to find out and putting that information out there, the public can then be informed about the illness that has been present, colonization and its effects, and can be informed about the positive changes that are occurring. Today I was at the youth engagement and met with young women in their late teens and early 20s, and hearing about all this programming that's going on throughout the territory and other provinces that are getting folks and young people connected back to their land, or getting them connected with elders, like amazing programming that's coming out there, and then the positive effects it is having on our people. Get that out there so non-Indigenous Canadians can learn about that. And then they can see what they can do as allies. You can get them engaged, get them encouraged, get buy-in. But without any of that knowledge, it's impossible to act. And so moving forward, as I think my time is coming to an end soon, but moving forward, what I see, or what I hope for, is a strong connection between Indigenous culture and health, with buy-in from the systems that serve us, which is, government, healthcare, programming, and not just buy-in, but implementation of Indigenous values, ways, and culture into the services being provided, and also having Indigenous values reflected in our health research. My hope is that the host, remember our communities, our people, regain our health with an increase in our immune cells, so our cultural practices, traditions, and languages, and anti-parasitic agents, our allies in government and healthcare, to come together and get to that level of what we call in science homeostasis, that term for balance, for well-being, that things are right. So thank you so very much for listening to me speak tonight. It's a huge, huge topic to talk about, and so I feel like I've perhaps just skimmed the surface, but I hope that I've gotten the juices flowing, those brain juices flowing and thinking, and perhaps set the stage for the rest of the speakers to really dive into some of these topics in great detail, and get you guys engaged and excited about Indigenous health and research. And at the end of tonight, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, want to speak at all, I'm here and I'm happy to have some conversation. So thank you again.